Today is Maundy Thursday, and the reading for today is in the Gospel of John, chapter 13, verses 1 to 17, and then verses 31 to 35. Jesus said, "As I have loved you, so you must love one another." What does this sentence mean for us today? After Jesus had finished washing his disciples' feet, he asked, "Do you understand what I have just done to you?" It seems that 2,000 years later, we still struggle to understand what Jesus did to his disciples that night. Not everyone realizes that this passage in John's Gospel is in the place of the institution of the Lord's Supper in the other Gospels. I mean, while in the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, there is a reference to the words of Jesus in the Last Supper, in the Gospel of John, there is none. John only tells us what Jesus said and did after the supper, whereas in the other Gospels, Jesus told his disciples to remember him sharing bread and wine. In John's Gospel, Jesus told his disciples to wash the feet of one another. I dare to say that for John, the feet washing was so important as the Lord's Supper. For John, Jesus' action of washing his disciples' feet was so meaningful as it was the celebration of communion. According to our Bible reading, Jesus said, "I, your Lord and teacher, have just washed your feet. You then should wash one another's feet. I have set an example for you so that you do just what I have done for you." Of course, we may say that this text has to do with Jesus' own context. When people walked on dusty roads with only sandals on their feet. And that therefore, at the end of the journey, they would get their feet very dirty. Nowadays, we have cars, public transport, pavement, and shoes. And we do not need to wash our feet after every journey anymore. It was an old practice. The host should provide someone to wash their guests' feet. But nowadays, we do not need to do that anymore. So we could say that is the end of the story. That was at that time, and now the time is different. However, we also know that who would wash the guest's feet would be a slave or a humble servant. Then, when Jesus washed his disciples' feet, he was doing a job of a servant. He was doing what a servant normally did. I can accept that washing feet is not usual for us. But then, what should we do that is similar to the washing feet in Jesus' time? What should we do that would be equivalent to what Jesus did? Jesus showed us that he wanted to serve, that he was not ashamed of being like a humble servant or like a slave. I think that this passage is difficult because we are so far from Jesus' message that we struggle to find a similar task. I think that our society has lost the meaning of being a servant. In other words, we do not understand what Jesus did to his disciples. But to be fair, the disciples did not understand what Jesus did, and the church afterwards could not understand either. We have difficulties not only to serve, but also in accepting being served. Very often, we are like Peter, who did not want to have his feet washed by Jesus. Pride, shame, maybe both. I know that we are losing contact with those words of Jesus. We are living in a society that is not able to understand this gesture anymore. The question to each one of us is how to be servants in our context here in Glasgow. How to follow Jesus' example of serving others. Of course, this text has a much deeper meaning as well. We are speaking of the incarnate God washing his disciples' feet. He is the divine King who reigns over the whole world, and he is here to serve, to wash dirty feet. That is our God, a God who came to show us a different way of life, a God who serves and saves, a God who washes and cleans, a God who dies and suffers, a powerful God, but at the same time a servant God. This is our God, who teaches us to serve, who serves us to teach us another way of life, not marked by pride and arrogance, but by love and humility. He taught us to serve one another, to enjoy serving and being served. Amen.
From heaven you came, helpless babe, entered our world, your glory veiled, not to be served, but to serve. You gave your life that we might live. This is our God, the Sovereign King. He calls us now to so